Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld adventure in the Tropical Rainforest with the Believers of Boyo. Now last time we left off after hopefully fixing this series, and I might still decide to make a separate video on how I achieved that. During the episode itself then we had a good amount of stuff happening. We had our first pirate siege and also attacked an enemy outpost, but we ended the episode on a bit of a sad note as we decided to sell most of our bears. In exchange, we obtained several useful items, including a few side trainers, and so today we begin things by having Wyatt learn the skip psycast. As a melee fighter, I think this should be very useful for him, a great way to quickly close the distance or to get out of dodge should that be necessary. In addition to the side trainer, however, we have also obtained a crafting neurotrainer, and with a double passion in the crafting skill, Wyatt is a good candidate for this one too. And we can see it here, using it bumps his crafting skill up from level 10 to level 15, and this should make him a competent craftsman for the foreseeable future. Our other Psycaster Light meanwhile is working the fields, bringing in our first heal root harvest, and also continuing to chop down cocoa trees. Back underneath the mountain then you can see it, we have once again begun mining. Today I would like to construct some actual bedrooms, because what we are currently sleeping in should eventually become our common room. But of course, until all of that is finished, it will take some time. For the moment at least, we have more exciting news as donkey Colonists has given birth, and so, as always named after a generous patron supporter in the naming rights tier and above, we will name our latest animal acquisition Malthus, and with that we now have 4 donkeys, and I think that's enough for the moment. So I've told Kevin here to sterilize donkey male Loris. Unfortunately though, doing so outside and on nothing but an animal sleeping spot might not have been the best idea. In fact, Kevin fails so miserably that Loris now loses his front left hoof, which might impact his usefulness as a riding animal, which is what we have these donkeys for in the first place. To make matters even worse, we are then also struck by a volcanic winter, and who knows how long this could last, a few weeks, maybe even a few months. In the tropical rainforest it won't be the end of the world, temperatures will still be alright and we won't sit around in complete darkness, but our farming output will still be a little bit lower than usual. In the evening then we are making some kibble so that Squigs can once again start trading the animals a bit more. Especially our elephants, the Earl of Bronze, will need plenty of attention until they can finally haul for us. A few moments later then, Kevin also once again attempts the sterilization operation, but apart from improving his medical skill to level 14, this one is not met with success either. And on the following morning, just as a psychic soothe that started last episode is ending, Kevin then unfortunately fails once more, and before poor Loris here is getting accidentally butchered, I think it's time for a change of plans. So in the afternoon, our donkey is brought into the comfort of our hospital. And then, this time using proper medicine, Kevin starts the procedure a 4th time, and this time around he is successful. So that would be Loris, our only male donkey, now sterilized, but at least for a few days he is in no shape to attempt making babies anyway. The rest of the day then remains rather uneventful. In the evening you can see our storage room is getting rather cluttered, but apart from that we are doing just fine as a rainy thunderstorm sets in and forces us to haul our chocolate into safety. On the next morning then, we are learning another Psycast, this time with Light, who as our main Psycaster will now be given Farskip, an incredibly useful power for enemy raids, caravans and basically anything that takes place on the world map. Combine it with a few riding animals and we should be able to move around rather swiftly. Our new master craftsman Wyatt meanwhile has spent his time making a hood out of elephant leather, a hood that will now go onto our speaker of sacrifice Kevin, because since Kevin is incapable of violence, he is not participating in fights anyway, so wearing a marine helmet is perhaps not the best choice of gear for him. The hood meanwhile synergizes very nicely with his social skill, as it gives him a 20% bonus to his social impact stat, and while this will not directly influence trade prices or prisoner recruitment, it will affect how well liked Kevin is overall, and I imagine for our moral guide, for our speaker of sacrifice, that is not entirely irrelevant. Now, just a few short moments later, we learn that the crashed refugee we rescued last episode is fully healed, and passing by a fire left by the thunderstorm, she does also eventually make it off the map, but strangely enough, we once again receive no ideology development points for it, so I might just have to edit that in again. I'm not quite sure how this was caused, because again, this is a brand new save file and we should not have any more problems with this. Either way, for now, let's keep going. In the evening, with the fire spreading a bit more, we bring in more heal root, And we are now also using Kevin's counsel ability on Squigs, and he also succeeds, cancelling one of her negative mood impacts. As you can see, this does not entirely negate giving away her bonded animals, but it might hopefully keep her happy enough to avoid any mental breaks. The following day then begins in rather uneventful fashion. You can see it here, we are mining out another room. This will eventually become a small workshop, so that we no longer have production facilities inside of our bedrooms. Thanks to Squigs' and Wyatt's combined efforts, those production facilities are then also quickly moved in, and so, after the quick construction of a tool cabinet, the workshop is ready to be worked in. That is about the most exciting thing happening on this day though, so we can jump right ahead to the next morning. A morning that sees Brandon return from his working duty with the Empire. Just as a quick reminder, Brandon is a staggeringly ugly but psychically sensitive jogger. He too is gifted in the crafting skill and might have actually been the better recipient of that neurotrainer, but then again I don't think Wyatt would have liked that very much. To get us started then, Brandon equips an assault rifle, but we might actually also build him up towards a psycaster. Keep in mind that in the last episode we did also acquire a Psylink neuroformer, and while most of you were in favor of giving that to baby Ellie, I think Brandon here does make for a good candidate as well. Feel free to let me know what you think about that idea. But keep in mind that Brandon does not have the natural meditation type focus, so to level up his psycasting we would have to acquire more neuroformers or royal ranks. Now Brandon's return to us is also very well timed, because as you can see we have just finished that first extra bedroom. This one will now become his as we mine out 5 more for our remaining colonists. Speaking of which, in the evening we can see Took once again trying his luck with Squigs. But as always, his former girlfriend does not respond kindly, but who knows, there might still be some hope of these two getting back together. Brandon meanwhile is getting decked out in elephant leather pants and shirt. A duster will also follow shortly, that is what Wyatt is currently working on, and with that Brandon should be good to go. Unfortunately he's not much of a fighter, so I suppose we'll keep him out of the line of fire for the most part. On the next morning then, mining work continues, not really much to talk about here. Until our colonists decide that it's time to have another pain party. The last one marked the arrival of Brandon, this one now celebrating his return. And who knows, we might even get ourselves another colonist out of it, or if we get just a little lucky, at least an ideology development point. And since we are racking those up quite quickly, you might also already want to let me know which meme you would like to see us add next. There are definitely a few options here that could seem intriguing for the believers of Boyo. For the time being though, no development points just yet. Kevin in a hood, apparently not to our colonists' liking, and so the pain party unfortunately comes to a boring conclusion. A few hours later then, Wyatt has finished an excellent quality rhinoceros leather duster for Brandon, and so our latest acquisition can now move out of his probably pretty smelly parka and wear something a bit more suited to the jungle. In his new outfit, Brandon can then also go to work on our old base on the next morning. I had briefly thought about keeping this intact for guests and the like, but in its current state it's just not of any use even for that, so I think the best way to go here is to simply dismantle the entire place. This will give us back a good chunk of the wood we have spent building it, and we will definitely find a use for that in our new base. One such use, the construction of a few more shelves in our storage room. As you can see, the place is an absolute mess at the moment, and admittedly the shelves do not make it that much better. But at least from our colonists' perspective, it will keep things nice and tidy. And so we have already reached the end of yet another day. Our current colony wealth, by the way, a comfortable 71,000. To obtain the second part of the Arconexus map, meanwhile, we need to increase that to 275,000, so we still have a bit of a way to go. At the very least, the first of our temporary bedrooms can now be removed as Light moves into his new home, so our common room area will be expanding quite soon, I think. Unfortunately then, despite Kevin's counseling, Squigs does suffer a mental break after all. On the bright side, she is just wandering around in a psychotic state, but it is not the only inconvenience striking us this night, as the Earl of Bronze has just come down with the plague. Luckily though, Kevin is quick on the scene, and even with herbal medicine, the tent quality here is 58%, and with this one lasting for a full 2 days, I think our elephant friend should make it through. With one problem solved, however, another one arises pretty much immediately. Yes, it was only a matter of time until we had our first infestation. This one luckily taking place in the cave system north to our base, but as you can see it is a sizable number of insects, so we want to be careful about how to approach this. Now, at least for the time being, they do not pose any direct threat to us, We have about 1.5 to 2 days here until their insect hives start to spawn more of them, so we can take a bit of time here to pick just the right moment to attack. And that moment is probably not now, as Brandon now becomes the second colonist on a mental break. Because of a lack of recreation, he is now hiding inside of his room, which, looking at it, is certainly not going to solve that problem, but who are we to judge? And so we just continue mining. This right here will become another temporary bedroom, but having the same size of the corridor that we eventually want to construct here, it fits in quite nicely. And so our mountain base keeps expanding. In the late afternoon, the place is fully mined out, and just a few moments later, as Tuk is running away from an angry elephant, we have a meteorite strike the jungle. Perhaps even a bit too close for comfort for our hunter, and with this only being slate, it is nothing that we have an immediate use for. The elephant, meanwhile, is something we really want to have for our food production, and thankfully, with combined efforts, we have no trouble bringing it down. A few hours later then, we use the darkness of the night to engage the insects, or rather, we just sneak in with Light, who can now use his berserk pulse to kick off the madness. And as you can see, it does take a few seconds for the insects to realize what happened, enough time for Light to safely skip himself back outside. Using his Psychic Slug Psycast, he can also make quick work of one of the smaller bugs, but eventually all of the berserked creatures have gone down, and so we now have to fight the rest out in the open. Luckily, Brandon picks this moment to snap out of his mental break, and Light also still has 1 or 2 more berserk pulses left to give. The fact that Light is also carelessly shooting his smoke launcher though does not really make things easier for us, and unfortunately he also gets the receipt immediately, as a stray bullet from Brandon's assault rifle causes a small injury. At this point though, the fight is already reaching its climax. As you can see, we have insects, elephants, bears and Wyatt all battering away at each other. Wyatt then of course not in a great position here, susceptible to being shot in the back, but the burning effect of his plasma sword Redhawk is causing absolute chaos. And so our knight in shining armor, once again a large part of why we won this skirmish. Very fitting, I think, that he also has a dedicated bit of fan art at the end of the video, but we have not quite reached that point just yet. Instead, let us make sure that Grizzly Bear Cobalt here does not reach the point of death. As you can see, health-wise, he is in a bit of a pickle, but he fought bravely, and there is no injury that Kevin has not yet been able to fix. Unfortunately then, the fighting not over just yet, as a lone local capybara goes mad, and then quickly dies at the hands of Wyatt and Redhawk. Wyatt and Light, meanwhile, once again sharing a bed in our hospital. Yes, eventually we will of course build multiple separate beds in here, but at the moment I actually like the idea of sharing each other's pain. It definitely feels like something the believers of Boyo would be into. As you can see, Wyatt makes a pretty quick recovery though, and is back to smashing insects just a few moments later. Some of the hives here have actually already started reproducing, but I'm confident that Wyatt can handle all of this by himself. As you can see, he did take 1 more small scratch, but nothing serious, and let's make sure things stay that way as we now get rid of all remaining insect hives. In our kitchen, meanwhile, Tuk is processing the insect meat into kibble just so we're able to store as much of it as possible, while Wyatt once again joins Light for a few hours of recovery. In the evening, however, both of them are already fully healed, and we can see our common room expansion project is slowly taking shape. Now that we have another person who can both mine and construct in Brandon, things are definitely progressing a bit faster. And so on the next morning we can also see Brandon hard at work. We are now using all of that elephant leather we have stored up to make comfortable armchairs. Although Brandon will most likely not be the one to actually finish making them, that task will go to Squigs. Her construction skill is just a bit higher, and with that so is the chance at achieving higher quality. As you can see, slowly but steadily, Wyatt's old bedroom is also getting dismantled. Eventually I want this entire large area in the middle here to become our common room, a place where our colonists can eat, meditate, gather and fulfill their recreation needs. In a mountain base like this, I think it makes sense to have all of this in one room, otherwise you'd have to dig out and prepare rooms for everything separately, and getting those rooms to even mildly impressive status can take a while. So that's most of what we take care of here today, although of course we can't complete an episode without Tuk going on a food binge. But luckily we do have enough meals stored away, and I guess he's got to fill that big frame of his one way or another. After another uneventful night then, we set things up in our new common room. Yes, everyone will now be able to gather and eat from comfortable elephant leather armchairs. I think for our charitable efforts and for living underneath a mountain we have earned ourselves that small bit of comfort. A small group of travelers passing by, then the most exciting thing happening since the infestation. Unfortunately though, they have nothing to trade, and so instead we jump ahead a few more hours as we now receive another quest from the Empire. Their demands are getting more and more interesting, and this time they want to dump 386 toxic waste packs on us, and while the Altex robe here would be a good replacement for the one that Light is currently wearing, I'm not entirely sure if our charity extends this far. Those waste packs could cause us a good amount of trouble with pollution, so feel free to let me know what you think about this quest. Should we accept it or should we let it pass? In the meantime, our colonists are once again hunting down another elephant, but this time they will have to pay for it, because shortly after we watch Brandon make a few flirting attempts at Squeaks, the elephants unfortunately take revenge, and this time we have all of them to deal with. Now, luckily, only 3 of them remain at the moment, but still, this could become a tough fight, so this time around we are assembling everyone, except for Kevin and Ellie that is. For a change, we need all the help we can get here and cannot just rely on Wyatt. And as you can see, things work out just nicely. 2 of 3 animals go down almost simultaneously. The last one then panics because of being set on fire by Wyatt's plasma sword, and just like that, the fight is won. On the next morning then, you can see it, bedroom number 4 has been mined out. A bit of smoothing work and this one will be ready to move into as well. Took meanwhile is chopping and sizzling elephant like a madman, while we can also see Light working on a marble sculpture. This actually the only item I was not able to replicate from the earlier save file, so I will likely finish it in dev mode as soon as he's put in enough work, just so that his earlier contributions were not for nothing. And speaking of putting in the work, in the evening then it is finally time for one big milestone. After countless hours at the research bench, Kevin has finally unlocked the secrets of electricity. And so we now have an absolute plethora of stuff to choose from, and I would like to hear what you think we should do next. Of course, we could proceed with one of the basics, I'm thinking batteries or solar panels, and while we're at it, water mills would probably also be very well suited for the map we are playing on. Alternatively, we could also make the jump straight to hydroponics to make ourselves a bit more independent from the jungle, or we could go on the offensive with machining and everything that comes after, and then there's always the new stuff, in this case xenogenetics. Being able to finally work with biotech's gene mechanics, that would be interesting too, I think. So again, let me know what you would like to see us research next in the comments down below. At this point, with Kevin's bedroom cleared out, we can move the research bench into the common room as well. That way Kevin will have a bit of company while he's researching, and we free up another room that will actually stay a room for a little while longer, because baby Ellie is going to age up in a few days, and this might make for a good place to build her a small classroom. At night then, we are struck by another solar flare, but without any electrical devices that is of no concern to us, and so instead we spend all of our efforts on finishing up those bedrooms. Light meanwhile has also now finished his marble sculpture, and it is of good quality with a beauty rating of 270, depicting an illustration of a craggy abstract shape, and the work reminds the viewer of pain, probably about what you would expect from our resident psychopath. Wyatt, Brandon and Squeaks meanwhile spent all of their time carving out those final 2 bedrooms. My goal for today's episode is to move everyone out of that small common room area, which will then initially look rather empty I think, but in a mountain base it's a good idea to allocate plenty of space beforehand, and who knows how many more sarcophagi we eventually end up building, so I expect this place to fill itself up quicker than we might think. Late in the evening then, a high-intensity psychic drone once again makes life difficult for us. For Light, this means a mood penalty of a comfortable -94, so we are going to have Wyatt drop a word of joy on him just to ease that a bit, but I doubt it will help much. Luckily though, everyone can venture off to bed before the mental breaks strike. As you can see, I have moved Squeaks and Ellie a bit closer to the common room area too, just to make feeding a bit easier, but like I said, that will soon be a thing of the past, as Ellie's birthday is just around the corner. We'll take care of that, however, in the next episode. For today, let's wrap things up with some more fan art. This week, we begin things with a sad scene from the last episode, Squeaks saying goodbye to her grizzly bears, and honestly, this image was just heartbreaking for me, so let's hope that you find some new animal friends soon. We also have another piece by Isaac Young this week, this one depicting Tuk, or in Isaac's words, rather maybe what Tuk thinks he looks like after pigging out on food before passing out at the table from a lack of sleep. And both of those things, saying goodbye to the bears as well as Tuk's eating habits, are the topic of the next video, as Daniel from the Stick Figure History channel returns, and once again I'll let you enjoy this one in peace.
It's okay, Squigs. We're all gonna miss them. Look, even Kevin's upset. I gotta go eat something.
And no, we are not done just yet. We have one final bit of artwork from Agent of Gaba, and they put a tremendous amount of work into this one. I was privileged enough to see the creation process of this piece evolve over the last 2 weeks, a creation process that you can now see depicted as a time-lapse on screen, with the final result showing Wyatt in front of a slain elephant, with Plasma Sword Redhawk in his hands and with Redhawk also looking over his shoulder. As you know, she was an actual character in our Extreme Desert series, and her Spirit of the Desert now living on in Wyatt's fiery weapon. So once again, thank you all so much for the amazing contributions over the last few episodes. Time and time again, I am just absolutely floored by what this community can come up with, and so I am very much looking forward to next week's episode. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.